It's hard to believe that it's been over 200 days since the last time I played Dr. Disrespect's NFT game, DeadRop. I'll be honest, I probably would have forgotten this game even existed had they not consistently been sending me emails to remind me that I did in fact waste $25 on this. Well, in that span of time, the game has released two major updates, which they refer to as snapshots. Additionally, they've lowered the price of the game to just $9. Did my early investment get me any special bonuses or anything though? Well, it doesn't seem like it. If anything, this new lower price just feels like an arbitrary attempt to get new alpha testers to play their unfinished game. They've also announced even more things to sell to you, despite the developers themselves admitting that the game is in a state so early that it can't even be called early access. DeadRop's current round of microtransaction sales includes loot boxes and vehicle skins, which range between $20 and $30 each. This is in addition to the already controversial NFTs that they sold in a funding attempt sometime last year. Ignoring the hypocritical nature of the doc's attempts to dunk on current trends in the gaming industry, how has his very own game improved in the past 8 months? Well, only one way to find out. If you haven't seen my previous video on DeadRop, let me give you a quick summary of what exactly I'm talking about. DeadRop is an extraction-based first-person shooter game being developed and published by Midnight Society, a game studio founded through a collaboration between industry veterans and Dr. Disrespect, who is a YouTuber with 4.5 million subscribers. His resume also features important bullet points such as helping design a few maps in the worst Call of Duty game, as well as being over 6 feet tall in real life. The game's initial announcement was met with heavy criticism as the developers chose the controversial fundraising method of selling NFTs, promising rewards and exclusive benefits for those willing to take a financial risk on the game's success. This criticism was widespread, leading Dr. Disrespect to take to social media to justify the decision to build the game on the blockchain. But instead of forming a coherent argument, he just decided to simply call his detractors stupid. I purchased the game's early access pass for $25 back in March of this year, and then released a video providing some criticism and raising my initial concerns with the game. These complaints included strange gameplay and level design choices, exceedingly poor performance, and an apparent lack of direction from the development team. But the better part of a year has passed since I last took a stance on this game. Have they taken my feedback and sought to improve upon the core issues? Or have they doubled down and set themselves up for commercial failure? One of the first improvements I noticed upon downloading the latest DeadRop snapshot was that the game now includes an installer. Launching the game brings us to a more sophisticated homepage than I saw last time I played, complete with new game modes, vehicle customization, a new vendor page, and social features such as a friends list and the ability to play with a squad. Flipping through these pages, one of the things that I felt worth calling out was this vendor page. This page allows you to sell items that you extracted with in exchange for credits, which can then be used to buy other items that you might not have found in-game. Additionally, you can pay a fee to tag items in your inventory, which will allow them to be bought back from the vendor if you happen to lose them in-game. However, if another player picks up your tagged items, then you are still unable to retrieve that item. This was a much-needed change, as one of the most talked about principles of the game was that rare variants of weapons would exist as NFTs on the blockchain, and in theory, you could sell items that you extract with in exchange for real money. This was obviously a flawed idea that would never work in the real world, because players would just simply refuse to use rare items in-game, otherwise they'd be risking money. The concept of NFT items was also brought up frequently in the doc's arguments in defense of his game, where he said that extracting with high-value items allows for an entirely new gameplay and viewing experience. But it seems like the DeadRop team has since backed off from NFTs almost entirely, at least for now. Or, more likely, the idea of NFT items was never truly being entertained by the development team in the first place. It was simply Dr. Disrespect mouthing off on Twitter. Nowhere on the game's website are NFT weapons mentioned, and there's actually an article on the game's website that I must have missed before, where the true extent of blockchain integration is explained. The frequently asked question, is DeadRop a blockchain game, is answered by an article titled, How This All Works. This explains the length to which the game utilizes NFTs and the blockchain. In summary, the game itself does not currently use the blockchain, and it doesn't seem that they have concrete plans to implement it in the game at this time. However, the game is built to embrace decentralization in case in the future all games are crypto games. So far, the only real blockchain things with this game are the limited edition NFTs that were sold last year. These NFTs serve as early access passes to the game, and holders of the NFTs are granted special permissions, such as exclusive Discord chat rooms and the ability to get invited to real-life meetups with your fellow bag holders. Not something I'd buy for the current price of $410, but hey, maybe you value your money differently. This person who commented on my last DeadRop video said that they spend $100 on lunch, so I guess I have really no place speaking on the value of money. By the way, this entire video thus far has been scripted, proofread, and recorded, all while waiting in queue to play DeadRop. That's right. It seems that the doc's ravenously loyal fanbase is spending so much time volunteering to shill his game and leaving angry comments that they haven't any left to actually play the game themselves. This is only hampered by the steep asking price of $9 for access. It seems counterintuitive to espouse a player feedback-focused development pipeline, but then limit your player base to those dumb enough to fork over $9 for an early access game that might not ever release. This has, inevitably, resulted in not only a declining player base, but probably also a declining quality and feedback. Regardless, I eventually realized my mistake of queuing up for any game mode besides Extraction. Despite the game being marketed as a vertical extraction shooter, they have released an additional 6 game modes, none of which have any players at all. Switching over to the VES game mode yielded a shorter, in comparison, queue time of about 8 minutes. The game then begins, thrusting me into a racing game? What in the world is going on? Well, it seems that in order to justify selling car skins, they had to find a reason to include cars in the game in the first place. This has been implemented in the form of a racing minigame played prior to the actual first-person shooter match. This racing game involves navigating on a admittedly aesthetically pleasing highway, battling against other players in a race to the tower. While the world design is spectacular and the visuals are certainly nothing to scoff at, the car controls like a three-legged dog on ice. The overall poor performance, marred by stuttering and frame rate drops, certainly doesn't help either. The abuse of film grain gives a heavy vibe of filmed on a camera from the 1900s smeared with Vaseline, and there's no way to disable this. It's also worth mentioning that there doesn't appear to be any sound in this sequence, besides the collision sounds. Disabling the music makes this painfully obvious. I guess those massive engines in the back of these cars are just for looks. They're actually electric. It seems that this introductory race serves as a way to select your starting point upon arrival in the tower. Depending on the route that you took on the highway, you begin the match at a different point on the map. While it's certainly unique, it's not particularly interesting, and I can see this getting old fast if you have to do this every single time you play the game. But no matter where you're dropping, you'll soon encounter a far more prominent issue. There are only 3 people besides myself playing this game. As usual when playing these NFT games, I feel like I have to point out that it's not 3 AM on a Wednesday or anything like that. It's the middle of the afternoon on a weekend. Unfortunately, the first-person shooter gameplay of DeadRop feels entirely unchanged from my previous playtest 8 months ago. Gunplay is poor and unbalanced, movement is stiff and unreliable, and the audio is as horrific as ever. You'll spend most of your time wandering around the map looking for enemies. But, same as before, you're more likely to die from a random headshot off the screen than you are to have a fair encounter in this game.
Oh my god, you suck oh, you're so bad, bro. Dude, you suck at this game. Yo, get owned. Ah, loser. What? What?
This is due to the poor decision to base the game entirely around verticality. As explained in my previous video on this game, computer monitors and TV screens, believe it or not, are wider than they are tall. To combat this, verticality in first-person shooters is typically limited, as if someone's directly above you, you'll never notice them. In the few first-person shooters that do have a focus on verticality, such as Halo or Destiny for example, you'll notice that the developers have chosen to place the player's crosshair below the center of the screen. This allows you to have increased vertical visibility while still being able to engage targets on your level. DeadRop does not do this. I guess the developers never got to the tutorial where you learn how to move the crosshair in Unreal Engine. Now, it's a widely known trope in first-person game development that players don't naturally look up while they're playing the game. But don't take it from me, take it from Bill Van Buren, one of the designers on both Portal games.
Originally, these exit portal surfaces were static geometry in the final position, but playtesters stubbornly refused to look up to find them. This is another example of the classic game design problem of coaxing players to look up. By putting the portals on moving pistons, we were able to start them in a position that players were more likely to see.
Nonetheless, besides the decision to base the game around a concept that goes against the very nature of first-person shooter gameplay, the developers of DeadRop have also decided to focus their effort on adding new game modes and maps instead of fixing the core gameplay issues. Even though they've added 6 new game modes, those might as well not even exist, considering that there is nobody playing them. Usually it takes at least a year for early access games to fall victim to unsustainable scope creep, but just like with using the blockchain, DeadRop remains ahead of the curve. There truly seems to have been almost no effort made to improve on the severe gameplay issues plaguing this product's premier game mode. Allow me to reiterate a few of my previous complaints. Vertical movement is highly reliant on climbing the ladders around the map, which both slows down the pace of the gameplay and makes you extremely vulnerable. And depending on the angle that you're looking at while using the ladders, they might not even work properly. Lines of sight are unclear and grant an unfavorable advantage to players that reach the top of the map first. While they have added AI-controlled enemies that hunt you down to discourage camping at the top of the map, they're laughably easy to kill and really pose no threat. While I initially complained that it made no sense that you can respawn in an extraction game, I think I now understand why they've implemented this feature. This is to prevent players from immediately uninstalling the game after having to wait in another 7-minute queue after just one death. The full screen overlay scanline effect still remains every time you respawn. Its purpose, unknown. The general visual quality of this game is mixed, and as it's still early in development, there's really no point in criticizing it. The game's new map is assembled almost entirely with placeholder cubes, but despite this, it's already a huge improvement over the last one. This map has a smaller focus on verticality, and instead leans more into doors and windows. Regardless, it's hard to judge the map design accurately, as I was never able to get into a lobby with more than 3 players, and when in-game, I couldn't even find them. Also, this map doesn't lag nearly as bad as the other one does. This is probably because the other map is full of a bunch of assets dragged directly from the marketplace into the game, which results in many of them having a far higher poly count than necessary. Your player model is fully rendered and visible in first person, which allows you to look down and see your body as you play the game. But it looks really weird, especially the way that you hold guns. Your hands look all deformed and contorted, and it's especially prominent when looking at your shadow. They did fix the lack of push to talk though. However, the game is eerily quiet, as without the forced open voice chat, there's really no reason to ever speak. The only thing achieved by talking in this game is giving your position away. After a hard-earned lesson stemming from his real-life marriage, the doc has decided to implement Epic's anti-cheat software into his game. This is a step in the right direction, as one of the commonly shared fears with this game is that it would be rampant with cheaters. But with the NFT weapons seeming more like a marketing ploy than a reality, the importance of top-of-the-line anti-cheats fallen. While I did get to play a couple matches of DeadRop, unfortunately, I didn't wake up early enough to have enough time in my day to account for the lengthy queues, so it wasn't as much as I would have liked. It's apparent that this game needs an insane amount of work to be at a point where it's deserving of its price tag, and the previous controversy surrounding not only the game's spokesperson, but its use of NFTs is only making this a tougher sell. Assuming that only 1% of the doc's viewers bought this game, that's still almost $500,000 in income. Throw in the NFTs, which have a 10% royalty paid to the developers every time a third-party sale occurs, and we're looking at some serious cash already being made. For someone who speaks so poorly of the current state of gaming, Dr. Disrespect sure does seem to have no hesitation implementing these features into his own pride and joy. Selling early access passes is one thing, but microtransactions for said early access game? Yeah, this just screams cash grab, if you ask me. Why bother finishing the game when you could just build hype, sell a bunch of NFTs and pre-alpha passes, and then deliver the bare minimum product, still making far more money than most indie developers could ever dream of? While we're at it, let's see how much those NFTs are worth nowadays. Well, it looks like they sold for about $750 each when I made my first video about this game, and now they're only $410, so not looking like a great return on investment. But hey, diamond hands, am I right? In conclusion, I'm always happy to see content creators diversify their sources of income. After all, streaming on YouTube might not be able to pay the bills forever, especially when you have a history of getting banned. But so far, this just isn't it. DeadRop is an overhyped, overpriced, and empty early access title that nobody asked for. Multiplayer games live and die by their player bases, and we've seen games with the backing of AAA publishers fail and get shut down just months after releasing. Even if DeadRop does end up becoming a well-polished and finished title, what's going to set it apart from its competitors? $30 car skins.
They're making high-level production video pieces on new skins in the game, and people, I guess, like it. I don't know the state of this industry. I don't know where we're at, man. It's not what I grew up with. It was literally about playing the games and the fun aspect of playing the game and the interaction of playing the games. But now people are getting hyped on high production video pieces. We need to bring this culture of the industry. We need to bring the culture back.
It isn't L1.